Everyone, I'm just getting things ready. I'll start just shortly. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for joining. I am putting a poll up on Twitter, on my Twitter page, asking people. Ooh, I'm getting a lot of popping. Let me move this out of the way a little bit. Just trying to bring the mic closer, but I realize I don't have a pop filter on it, so it's making a lot of noise. That might be a little bit better. Putting a poll up on my Twitter page about what time of the day I should do live streams to maximize the number of people that can listen and watch in real time. So bear with me while I post this. If you want to put your vote in, you can put your vote in so I can get a sense of how to schedule these to maximize the people that can come and watch. The trouble is we got people watching from all over the world, and so I want to make sure that we are including as many people as possible. But as people are starting to go back to work a little bit more, whether that's good or bad is a different question. But as they're starting to go back to work, daytimes are going to be harder to come by. And so that's going to make it a little bit more confusing to figure out a time that works for everybody, but doesn't interfere with their family life and other obligations that may have. So I'm trying to find out the best way to do this. And also for myself as well. I don't want to take away from time that I would like to spend with my family. And sometimes we get so busy during the day that we only have a little bit of time in the evenings, even though we've been stuck at home for 2 months. It's still nice to spend time with them. So I wanted to talk a little bit today, mainly because I haven't been on in a while. A few weeks ago, we had done sort of a barrage of live streams for the American Society of Regional Anesthesia and Pain Medicine, where we went over the many of the posters that had been submitted to the spring meeting for ASRA, the meeting that got canceled this year. And we had a really great time. We actually ended up doing 6 shows instead of 5 because they were so popular, and there were so many topics to cover. So we did 6 shows, and ASRA loved it. The audience, I think, really loved it. We had so many people watching, and it was a really interesting experiment in how to do a poster session, and maybe we'll learn from that in the future as well. But so kind of an interesting fact from that is if you go back and look, so we've been tracking our social media activity through for ASRA spring meetings for the last 5 years, as we've been on an aggressive push to increase the amount of social media activity that we do. And so, it started out, they have this concept called impressions, which is a conglomerate term of basically the number of people that are participating, the number of people that it reaches, and based on the audience of the people who are participating, and then also the engagement of various sorts, retweets, replies, and things like that. And so they create this conglomerate score. It's not a perfect score, but it's a conglomerate score. And it's useful over time to kind of track things. So we've used impressions as a way of just sort of monitoring how things have gone with our social media activity at ASRA's meetings in the past. And about 5 or 6 years ago, when we really started looking at this, we were getting about 500,000 to 600,000 impressions. And then with a concerted effort, social media ambassadors, displaying and advertising the hashtag, advertising the ambassadors, really focusing on engaging people on social media in real time in context to the meeting. We noticed an increase every year, 500,000, almost a doubling. So 500,000 to 1 million, 1 million to 2 million, 2 million to 4. And then last year we got over 8 million impressions at our spring meeting. Well, this year we didn't have a meeting, and but we still used the same hashtag to kind of track the activity related to the meeting during that same time frame that the meeting would have occurred. And interesting development was that just by doing the moderated poster sessions, and we looked back on it, our impressions were about 2.5 million impressions, which obviously is less than 8 million from last year. It's less than what we would get at a full meeting, but pretty good considering there was nobody at the meeting. So I think there's a real value in expanding the audience and expanding the interaction, the availability. Particularly for posters. I think posters are a really interesting area to explore because when I read the reviews from the last few years' meetings about one of the frustrations that people have is they feel like they put a lot of effort into their research, they put a lot of effort in submitting abstracts and doing the posters, and then traveling to the meetings themselves. And they get secondary benefit from being at the meeting, so it's not just about the poster. But with so many posters, it's hard to get attention, I think, in an audience that you're hoping to get attention from about your research and your work, and hopefully magnifying that work and your reputation. And so, and it's just logistics. I mean, it's not that this is good work or bad work. It's a lot of it's really excellent work. It's just logistics of getting to them. I think we've also, with the loss of the paper posters, which I'm actually okay with getting rid of the paper posters, but with the loss of them, I think the browsability is gone down. The immediacy of that poster, the paper poster, was sometimes enough to grab your attention. And that was fine for a couple hundred posters, but we have so much good work coming up. If you limited it to a couple hundred posters, you would just be missing so much work. And at this meeting of 1,500 to 2,000 people, you would need a ballroom just for all the paper posters. And so there's no perfect solution. We've gone to e-posters. TV screens are sometimes not as engaging, but they have access to all the posters. And so I think this sort of live stream interactive conversation about how to discuss posters and discuss that research may be something that we keep doing into the future, even if we're not actually limited to in-person meetings. We can still do them at the meeting even, and just share a live stream from the meeting with the poster authors right there, which would be kind of a fun experience to do that way. So I'm brainstorming what that would look like in the future as well. Well, let me talk a little bit about what I've been up to, just to kind of show you guys some work that I've been dealing with. So my friend Ed Mariano has one of his efforts to expand his social media and online presence was he felt strongly, and he was right, that he should have his own web page to kind of consolidate all of his work into one place. There's a branding value to that, but it's also for searchability too. You want to make sure that if you're creating an online presence, that you have control over what your online search results will be. And the more you put on your own page and the more content you drive to that page, the more Google search hits. If somebody's searching for your name, the more they will successfully get to your page. And so you don't want people ending up at the wrong place if they're looking at you. So it's one thing that I haven't done. I haven't built my own web page, so I thought I'd do that. And I'm going to show some of the work that I've put on there just so you get a sense of what I've been up to. And again, you're welcome to join me in this conversation. I'm going to put the invite link for this StreamYard live stream into the comments. But feel free to join me. You don't have to be one of our old guard to come and join me in this conversation. I'd love to hear from you and see how you're doing, what unique things that you're working on in your own space too. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking myself. So if I pop up no, that's the wrong one. Let's try that. Okay. So this is my new webpage. So that's me. Obviously, the webpage is rajguptamd.com. I was smart a few years ago. I was like, I better get my own website before somebody claims it, and I have a hard time getting it later. So I went ahead and just bought the website. If anybody's interested, I use a company called hover.com, hover.com. But there's lots of places that you can buy website domains from. They've been clean, simple, easy to use, relatively good prices. And I just pay for them annually to maintain the names. I've actually bought a bunch of names for my kids too, even though they make fun of me about it. I went ahead and bought their names, websites for a few different variations, so that when and if they decide to make a website down the future, I can give it to them and it's not already commandeered by somebody else. So on this website, just to give you an idea, a little browse, I made a homepage, which is actually pulling stuff from some of my other pages. I have a section for blog posts. This is an article actually just came out by our Vanderbilt media relations people. It's a project I've been working on for enhancing intubation boxes during COVID-19. If you guys know, there's a group out of Taiwan that came up with a design of a square cube made out of acrylic with holes in it to go over someone's head while you're intubating them to reduce the amount of droplets that the intubating clinician gets exposed to. Actually, there was a paper in New England Journal, a letter to the editor in New England Journal that described that it was pretty effective in containing those droplets. The problem is that the aerosols were not discussed. So the fine aerosols that float in the air, when you're just sticking your arms through these holes, they could escape from those holes. And your arms and your hands and everything like that are exposed to all these droplets and aerosols. So when you pull your arms out, if you pull your arms out of the box, now all of that is at risk of getting exposed. Hey, Harry, how are you? Hey, Jenny, good to see you. Yeah, Jenny, I'm really excited about this work and finally got the article together. If anybody's interested, if you click on the link, so go to rajguptamd.com. It's on the front page. The link will take you to the news article, and the news article has links to my videos. I'll put my direct links to my videos on here soon too. Literally, I've got this webpage up and running the last 3 days, so I'm still trying to get all the content in the right place. But what we did is we did a simulation and actually used a smoke machine, like those smoke machines you find on concert halls and stuff like that. And we puffed smoke into the box to kind of represent aerosols into the box. Let me see if I can pull that up here. So this goes to the news article. So we pumped, I don't know if this is going to play the audio. I haven't tried to play audio on here. My friend James Lozada has a radio voice. So if you listen to it, he does the beginning disclaimer in a really, really great radio voice. He does voiceover stuff. He used to be a journalist, if you guys haven't met James before. And so you can see in this one, this is the demonstration of the situation without the new retrofit solution. And if you look in this, you can see that as I start pumping smoke in here, I don't know if you guys can see this. There we go. As I start pumping smoke in here, and you can see it just puffing over my face. Do you see that? There's smoke just billowing right over my face into my eyes. Now, presumably, I should be wearing full PPE and trying to protect myself from all of this. But, yes, it protects against droplets, but with all that aerosols going on, you're still contaminated all over your face, your PPE, your gown, your goggles, your face shield, whatever. So you have to be super careful when you doff all this material that you might get contaminated at that point. And so it worried me that we were having this false sense of security when using these devices. And so that was my concern with that. And then also you see that when I pull my arms out at the end of the video, somewhere at the end of this video. Yeah. So as I if I'm wearing a gown and gloves and all that kind of stuff, as I pull my arms out, you're still, I've got everything on my arms. I could touch myself. I could do all that kind of thing. And so not super great. And let me see if I can pull up the other video. We've got a lot of content on here. Okay, here we go. Here's the video. If anybody's interested, and you can always reach out to me if you're curious about what we did. So this one, here's the solution that we did. In this one, what we did is we took magnets and we actually embedded them around the circles, the armholes, and then we built two separate magnetic acrylic rings and embedded magnets into that. And so now, let me pause this for a second. So that was our solution initially, but you could create 4 of these rings with magnets on them and then glue 2 of them around the holes and 2 that are free. And you'll see how that works in a second here. But that's probably the simpler solution. We actually had a hard time embedding the magnets in the acrylic without damaging the box. But if you already have a box, you could just glue another ring. It's not hard to make these acrylic rings. And by the way, I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to patent anything or anything like this. I just wanted to describe a technique for making this better. So we have these magnets around here. And then what we did was, I'm going to fast forward this since you're not listening to the audio here. So I took a surgical gown, a paper surgical gown, and I cut it out and I left part of the chest section attached to the armholes. So there was a little bit of a flange, a lip around the armhole. And then I already put gloves on ahead of time. And then I pushed, and then we've obviously enclosed all the way around the simulation, around the person here with blankets and stuff to try to minimize escaping from other cracks. But here, I'll show you. So we push the arms through the holes, and I have that little flap there. And you can see I just kind of attach the magnet ring around the base to the magnets around the hole. So pretty simple. And what it does is it creates a seal. It's flat with flat magnets holding it together. And then I did the other side. And you do this before the procedure. And now I've got magnets. And so I stuck that on there too. And what we did is we marked the magnets rings so I knew which way was up. And then you would just stick those on and they line right up. These are pretty strong magnets, but you don't even need it that strong, just strong enough to hold that paper gown. And then kind of fed my arms through. I realized the bed was a little low for me, for my height when I did it. And then put another pair of gloves on so that, and you'll see this is important at the end. I realized you got my title wrong on here. I'm officially an associate professor, so not that that matters that much. So now we did the smoke this time, and as you watch, there's no smoke billowing up around my face. And I kept pumping smoke in this. I had a little foot pedal that pushed more and more smoke into this box. And what's interesting, and I'll pause it for a second here, or I'll keep playing it. What's interesting is that we actually put 2 wall suction tubings, just raw tubings, no suction canister, just straight suction into the wall, into the box to try to see. I'm going to add Dr. Allah Mohammed here if he can join me. Hey, Dr. Allah, how are you?
Good evening.
I'm not hearing you right now. Hang on. Let me make sure.
I'm just trying to find my headphones.
Oh, that's right. My audio is wrong.
Outside. I just came back home right now.
Hey, how are you? Good, good. I can hear you now. Sorry, I was just finishing describing this video. We just got this published online, and so I was going to show people. So anyway, so when we use this, if you go back, so when I was pumping the smoke in, there was no escape. There was a little bit of leaking around the blanket edge and stuff, but nothing that was coming back towards me. And then when I was removing the arms, you can see you can just leave the gloves, the outer gloves in there. And so that maintains the seal for the sleeve. And the same thing on the other side. Take all of that off on the other side together so it maintains the seal and nothing escapes through the armholes, and everything is sealed at the back end of the box. Now, this isn't a perfect end solution because you still have everything trapped inside the box. I would probably let it settle, maybe even let it stay there until extubation. But it is a significant reduction in exposure without the aerosols leaking with a relatively inexpensive solution. And that's something that's retrofit compatible. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with people. How are you, Dr. Allah? How are you? Good to see you.
We are fine. Actually, in our hospital, we just already closed the COVID-19 departments.
Oh, you
We have
did?
only two. Yeah, we have only two patients in mild to moderate clinical situation. We have no intensive care COVID-19 in our hospital.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we arrived at maximum number in whole Israel, about 200, maybe less, 180 ICU recovered patients. Now we have only 60 persons
In all of
in the
Israel?
ICUs. Yeah, in the
Wow.
ICUs. And we have already in active state of the disease around 4,000 patients.
Okay.
We
Meaning
start
tested
opening,
positive, but not necessarily sick, correct?
yeah, we start opening all the facilities, schools, malls, beaches.
So what are they doing about testing there as they're opening these things up, especially things like schools? Like who's getting tested, how often, what kind of testing?
They divide the classes. Actually, they start firstly with first grades, from the first to the third grades,
Uh-huh.
and then they opening the whole system,
Mhm.
not the academic and the universities, not yet. They work. I heard also in Denmark they use the same program. They divide actually the class in two. So 2-3 days, half of the class attend the classes, and the rest of the week the other half.
So they're trying to
Keeping
reduce the
distance.
amount of crowding in the classrooms.
Yeah,
They want to keep the
For
kids
example,
separate
we have
more.
in each class we have around 40, 35, 40 children, and now they 20.
Okay. So
Making
they
them
can spread out a little bit more. Are there all the kids wearing masks?
I don't know if the small kids they will wear masks,
Yeah.
but I hope so.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Like, I don't know what age group do they start tolerating masks wearing. I mean,
About
we have,
mask, I think less than 7 years old they don't have to.
yeah,
So
because I
till
don't think they'll
7 years
keep it on
old.
very well anyway. So I don't know what good it
Yeah,
does at that point.
and you can't tell the the small kids don't play with your friends and
Yeah.
keep distance from them.
Yeah, we worry about them switching masks with each other. Then it's
Yeah,
almost worse.
and
Almost worse
touching
at that
everyone.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have a hard time. My kids, I mean, even when we go outside, we ask them, my kids are older, but we ask them to wear masks, and, they only tolerate it for so much time. It doesn't fit properly. It's loose. The standard sizes are a little too big for them, those kinds of things.
They use now here for small kids the scotch, or they just doing mask homemade, and they
Yeah.
just give them the right size.
Yeah, the ones I've seen are what I like is the ones where it have the clip on the back, and so you take
Yeah.
that ear one, but then clip it behind here so it doesn't hurt the ears, and then
Yeah,
it
they
fits
like
better
it's,
with the kids.
trendy now. Yeah.
So what are you guys doing about testing? So I mean, are they testing you guys at the hospital, doing nasal swab or just symptoms or fever or what?
You mean for us as doctors and the healthcare
Yeah.
worker?
Yeah.
No, we don't have.
So no routine testing.
No routine tests.
What about in other places? Are they doing routine testing, sample testing? Monitored.
No. They start to say about they have to do around 20,000. As we are a small country, they say that 20,000 a day tests a day, but we never arrived at numbers because we have 4 to 5 laboratories that they do the tests, and the maximum capacity is around 10,000 tests a day.
Okay. And who's getting those tests? The patients coming into the hospital?
Patients with the symptoms.
Symptoms. Yeah. Okay. So no asymptomatic monitoring yet.
No.
So what about
some people who was in a contact with other people?
Right. So they are doing some contact tracing. So they are doing some contact tracing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays we have a day around 20, 25 patients, new patients. So it's good.
How do you guys handle elective surgery now?
Like this, persons who suspected or were in contact with positive patients, we do the test.
Okay.
Otherwise, we don't apply the test.
And then what about for you when you're doing intubations or anything like that?
All
Are
the
you
time,
guys
I
using
keep the
still
mask. I
full
keep the
PPE
shield all the time
for every patient, no matter what?
for every patient. I
Yeah.
don't know who's positive, who's negative. I
Yeah.
keep it for not for myself as more for the other patients who don't pass the.
Yeah. Trying not to spread it from one person to the next.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then are you guys reusing your masks? Are you cleaning them or what are you doing?
Now we have enough masks. Actually,
You
we
do.
have enough. Yeah, we have enough.
And the face shields and everything like that, you have enough. So are you throwing them away between patients?
Yes.
Changing between every patient?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting where decisions are being made differently based on the size of the community, the density of the population, and the incidence. So one of the things that I've been kind of looking at is, if we dig back to our medical school career and think back to our epidemiology studies and stuff like that of sensitivities and specificities, we have to remember, even if we have a test that's really good, let's say it's a really good test, 95% sensitive specific, if the incidence in the population is very low, that test actually is not that good. So
Exactly.
you still miss a lot of people.
Because I'm seeing in Sweden, for example, they have the same population as in Israel.
Yeah.
And they have much more than us about positive patients.
Yeah.
And about the mortality, they have a very high percentage. They have, I think, as numbers, more than 2,500 deaths, and we had only 256, 255.
Yeah. And we know that Sweden kind of was the experimental case of not doing any social distancing, right? So they tried to get to broad scale immunity through the population by allowing people to be exposed to each other. I'm not going to make a judgment about which is the better choice because, we did shut down our entire country in the United States and we still have 81,000 people that have died in the United States so far. So something didn't work here either. So it's not a simple answer that one solution was better than another.
We can look at the countries, they did midway between the two options, like Norway, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Norway, they shut the schools, universities, and colleges, but they didn't shut the malls, the shops, or something, the stores. They kept a very strict social distance,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a small amount of deaths and a small amount of positive.
Yeah. It's just so hard to compare, because there's so many multiple variables. You take into account how these policies were implemented, when they were implemented relative to someone arriving into bringing infection into the country, how diligent was the population, or how many times did they break the rules, how big is the population, how concentrated is the population, and then also what's the general health of the population to begin with, because more people have bad health to begin with, they're sicker they're going to get with the same exposure. And we don't even know in so many of the countries, we don't know how many people were infected, felt a few sniffles, and then they were better, right? And they got COVID-19 but didn't get really sick because they were healthy to begin with. We don't even know that yet.
Yeah, we can talk about the point they are saying in Italy. If we exclude the region of Lombardy, Milan city, and the metropolitan of Milan, you can take the percentage of mortality, and in Italy it's the fourth or the fifth in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But if you include Lombardy, it's the first country in Europe.
Right. Well, it's them and Spain competing, right? Spain has also had a very high mortality
as percentage
rate.
I read the last papers, it was Belgium, about
really
16.8% of mortality.
Wow.
Italy, it's around 15.
Wow. I
can share you that if I found it, I can share you.
Yeah, regardless, it's all too many, it's too many people dying for something that you could argue they shouldn't be dying from.
As you said,
Um,
also there's a multiple criteria for how to diagnose or to say, okay, this person died with he was positive for COVID,
right.
but the cause of death is COVID or something else, like in Germany and Italy. In Germany,
Yeah.
they count only who exactly confirmed and who was with no medical history. And this one, he died for COVID-19.
Right.
Otherwise, they died for CHF or any other kind of disease.
Yeah, that does create confusion in the numbers. So the numbers aren't even the same.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife is an internist and she was doing telehealth visits, virtual visits for the last 2 months. And there's lots of her patients that she said, I think based on your symptoms, you probably have COVID-19, but there's no point in getting the test right now because you're not too sick. And even if you got the test, they would just tell you to stay home. So just stay
Exactly.
home. Now, how many of those people ended up getting counted, right? They didn't get tested, so they didn't get counted in the statistics. So, the numerator and denominator are all messed up because so many people
we will
just
never
didn't get tested.
know how many exactly
Yeah.
were positive, and the numbers will never be exact numbers.
How are you doing? How is your workload? Are you getting a little bit of break?
Actually, I want to go back to the COVID era because we did 24 hours and 2 days off or 3 days off or something else.
Now you have to work every day.
Now I work every day, and in the last 8 days, I have 4 24-hour shifts. So
I know.
I'm all the time in the hospital.
Yeah, I'm looking at my next month and a half, and I'm working a lot in the next month and a half. I don't have any days off for like 6 weeks,
Yeah, I was gardening and I was playing with my kids. Now I don't have time even for this.
I know. And it was getting busy. We were stressed out when we were home, and now we're going back to a different kind of stressed out.
They also give us a lot of new residents in our department. And I just working a lot with the new residents, like teaching them and working with them hard.
So they're brand new residents. They haven't been on the wards before?
No. We have 4 to 5 new residents. They don't know anything about anesthesia. So we start with them.
What's their impression of this walking into this COVID world of their training? I mean, how is this for them? I mean, because it's got to be scary for them in many ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, they ask from them to go and work in the COVID department, and they just refused.
Well, they don't have the skills yet to protect themselves even.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And usually when we had a call for intubation in the COVID department, always we went to two of us, not only one, because you have you need some more. How can I say that? With a lot of experience. So
right.
Experience for intubation, with how to deal with difficult intubations. So it was you need skills and you need the experience, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we only took our most experienced residents, our trainees, with our attending anesthesiologist, to make sure that you minimize the number of attempts and then also you minimize the mistakes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, young trainees, they're stressed out about intubation to begin with, and then you try to add the stress of not contaminating anything, not contaminating yourself or hurting anybody else. And that's too many variables at once.
Very hard with all the clothes and the protection that you have on.
I know, too many layers. Yeah.
The problem we had in our department, actually, it was the nurse stuff.
What do you mean?
We had more internist nurses in the COVID departments, so they don't know how to deal exactly with the ICU's patients.
Oh, I see. They were from outpatient nurses.
A lot of times they called us to how to manage the patient, the ventilated patient. Sure. Yeah. So after 3 or 4 weeks, 3 weeks, they start to change all the planning. They just remove almost half of the nurse staff, and they just take ICU nurses.
Yeah, I mean, especially as your numbers come down, you want to focus on the people that are the most trained to
Yeah.
take care of those patients. No reason to put other people at risk unnecessarily, and patients at risk because it's not being done in the best way. So, are you guys? Do you get a sense that in the community the fear level has gone down?
Yeah, they start to go out. They I don't know how much of them keep the social distance. So we are afraid from the second wave.
Yeah, because I just saw an article about Germany is already seeing a rise again in their
Yeah, yeah,
cases.
yeah. I read it this morning. Yeah,
Yeah. So I worry about that wave. I just don't know what the impact of everybody being closed off for so long that will we do even more social non-distancing just to compensate for 2 months of being apart, and then we get ourselves into trouble too fast. And
yeah. And nowadays, when in the summer we have a lot of vacations, holidays. We have all the wedding season starting right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So it's a very it's concerned about how would be the second wave.
Yeah. And you know what's confusing to me is from the virus's standpoint, nothing has changed from 2 months
Yeah,
ago,
we
three
don't have
months
a
ago.
vaccine. We don't have an exact therapy. Was a X therapy worked in X country, in the Y country, the same therapy doesn't work.
Right, right. And that's happened with almost all of the drugs that people have tried is inconsistent results right now. And you know, when we look back on this time, it'll probably be a combination of medications that work, but it takes time to figure out those combinations. And
Yeah,
so you know, I would say that the biggest difference right now is that people are a little bit more aware. Hopefully, if they feel symptoms, they isolate themselves when they feel symptoms. And the hospitals are more prepared with PPE and units that are prepared for COVID-19. Even if you're reducing the capacity, they still are maintaining some amount of capacity for these COVID patients coming in. I just hope that's enough when a second wave comes in that people can handle that. That's the thing that I stress out about.
what I can say that the behavior of the people now are changed. For example, shake hands. It was like the ABC of to say hi or something
Sure.
for people's ear. Now they just keep distance and they just touch with the elbow and they say, "Okay, hi." We do shake hands,
See,
and
I've
it's
been saying the Indian people have had it right for generations. You know, for thousands
yeah,
of years, we've been doing this, and we knew it a long time ago. Don't touch anybody.
no, no, we Arabs with the hugs, shake
Yeah.
hands. Yeah, nowadays they keep distance.
Yeah. So
Even
I
with
mean,
my parents, I just keep distance with them and I do shake hands with them, and it's a little bit tough, but it's okay.
so our friend Amina, who's in Algeria, she says that
Yeah.
they're also noticing less fear right now. So, and hopefully, you know, they're not seeing as they're opening up their community, they're not seeing the wave coming either. But, you know, in the United States, what it seems to be happening is that we're the places that were high concentration areas, New York City, um, uh, New Orleans, some of the other big cities, they seem to are getting better. They're getting it under control. Things are going down. Still really bad, but much better. Um,
Hello, Amina.
and but the other areas that were slow to rise, now they're rising. Smaller communities, smaller cities, more rural areas, they're starting to go up. Somebody here, Tricky Ricky, says it's not going to open up anytime soon. It will spike again. Ricky, can you tell us where you are, just out of curiosity, where what you're seeing around you, what context that's in? But yeah, it's very different in different places, and some places people are almost defiant, and they want to go out and they want to, like you said, hug and touch and no masks and do all the normal things. So Ricky's in London. So London, they're not going to, because yeah, UK got hit very hard. UK got. Oh, I got Mike Aziz on. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Sorry, I got on late. Thought I'd check
Oh
in.
no, you're fine. Hey, how are you?
Not bad.
This is Dr. Mohammed is in Israel,
Nice to meet you.
and Mike Aziz is in Portland, Oregon. And Mike and I went to residency together at University of Michigan, so we've known each other from many years ago.
Long time.
Him and his buddy are the dancing fiends on the internet. They're the current COVID-19 internet sensations. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well.
How's life out west? You guys were sort of the early, some of the earliest cases. You know, everybody, the stress started there, but it seems like the West Coast got kind of a handle on this really quickly.
Yeah,
and the numbers dropped quick.
We've got very little of it in Oregon.
Yeah,
very little. We put the brakes on and emptied the hospital, and it's still kind of empty. So we're figuring out how to safely ramp back up.
So are you ramping back up? Is that what's going on right now, or are you guys still kind of in a holding pattern?
No, we're somewhere in an intermediate phase, doing half our volume.
Yeah. What about testing? Are you guys, so that's the kind of thing that I've been asking a lot of people, and I get different answers from different people, whether there's any value in testing, because the viral testing is only good for a couple of days before you're potentially getting infected again. And antibody testing, we're not sure what that means right now. What are you guys doing with testing right now?
So our testing capacity is good. We're routinely doing PCR testing 2 to 3 days out.
For elective surgery, you mean?
All procedures, yeah. And then we have a rapid test for more urgent ones, though sometimes they're more urgent than a rapid test can result. So
right.
It's a rare case once a day across the sites where we just don't have time to get the test. And but with a low community rate here in Oregon, we've our risk modeling, we've decided that we could just use standard precautions for a asymptomatic recent test undetected patient, and then in patients get retested, and we try to find the right balance there, and we're still in a little bit of a conserved PPE strategy.
Yeah, we've our recommendations is if they're test negative, you do normal stuff, right? But if they're obviously test positive or still under suspicion, then you do full PPE protections for those. Maybe a little excessive at the time, but because we don't know what's out there and we don't know who's going to seroconvert, we go ahead and do all of that. I had, we're sort of in the same boat as you, Mike, is that at least our admitted population, elective surgery admitted population, the rate of infection is extremely low. I almost worry about that because that leads to a certain amount of complacency over time. We're not there yet, but you do this for a couple more weeks and people are going to be like, oh, this is not that big a deal. And I had the luxury of taking care of a patient last week who did test positive coming in for, not elective surgery, but not emergent either. And so we did the full get up PPE. And I haven't had to do that very often because even if we've had infected patients, they don't necessarily come to the operating room that often.
Right.
And, it does hit your nerves. It hits your nerves when you're going through all those processes and you're sort of checking in your mind. We actually ended up doing him under block and no intubation, just kept his face covered the whole time with a mask and just nasal cannula oxygen. And it worked great. He had an injury on his hand. But even without even handling the airway, I walked out of that room realizing that my adrenaline was surging. And not only concern for myself, but also like watching, did that person take their goggles off? Are they touching their face? Who has the N95 in? Who else needs to be in this room? Who doesn't? And all those kind of little mental checks. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people that have done so many of these patients over and over and over again. And I can't imagine what that sort of adrenaline does to your body over time.
Yeah, I would say a couple things there. One, it's good to be a skilled regionalist, Raj. So hats off to that.
Yeah, it paid off nicely.
I share the sentiment. I mean, I heard from people in New York and around Detroit where at one time they had 4 airway teams deployed that were just intubating COVID positive patients
constantly
all day.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, they were at it, and there's some good models of care out there just coming out in the literature that if you have a robust PPE plan around these known COVID patients, it can be safe, but they're dialed in, right? They're doing it. They have got spotters watching them. They're doing it in a meticulous way each time.
Right.
Whereas you're right, our normal operations in the OR, there certainly could be a lot of asymptomatic carriers, and it could be, they could be people with no patient contacts that we are inadvertently touching the same surfaces or each other and touching our faces, et cetera. And so I think, there's a lot of risk of us being lax about basic contact droplet precautions.
Yeah.
And perhaps, we've overemphasized the airborne precautions. It's not that it's not there. It's certainly there. But the contacts worry me a bit more, I want to say, because they're every day, they're routine.
So we have one commentator, and I apologize because I don't know your real name. I'm assuming it's Ricky, but Ricky said that you should still use PPE to ensure you're protected as best as possible, regardless. And he was agreeing with you that that's probably why you should continue to wear them. Yeah, I'm more concerned about touching door handles and stuff from the employees and staff in the hospital or things like that. And so, like, as soon as I touch something, I just kind of feel like I'm in the operating room, just kind of like, don't touch anything else until I can get it cleaned off, because I'm paranoid about that. So Doc Mornay Wilmerans from one of our buddies in Europe says point of care testing and isolation before elective surgery. But he said if you go for the regional anesthesia option and the patient coughs. Yeah. So, and Mornay, you're welcome to join. I put a link up on there for the StreamYard link if you want to join in too, or Ricky, either of you guys, if you want to join in to the conversation. I'd love to hear your perspective from Europe as well. But yeah, so we kept a mask on the patient. And everybody in the room was still wearing N95 masks and still wearing face shields and still wearing all of the protective gear throughout the operation, including the surgeons operating on the hand, the whole operation from the time we entered the room to out. And we left the mask on the patient to reduce droplets from if they're just talking or coughing or whatever, trying to minimize that risk. But we felt like if we didn't have to introduce an airway, that's one other step of risk, both in the placement of the airway, but also removal of the airway, that we just didn't have to introduce that extra risk above and beyond normal contact and airborne droplets and stuff. And Mornay says the patients are most likely more at risk from us. Yeah, I think that's probably not unfair statement, because we're there getting exposed constantly, potentially. Especially in high prevalence areas, again, some of us are in a low infected area. I'm wondering if we're too conservative there. I wonder if we can be more aggressive. I've had this argument with several of my colleagues about that we're going too slow and we're not opening things up fast enough.
For example, all elective or emergency or elective, all patients arrived with the mask, surgical mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we use regional anesthesia before the COVID-19 era, we used sedation or sometimes general anesthesia, and after that I proceed with the regional anesthesia. Now I can use a local anesthetic infiltration, and then I perform the block, and that's it, with the surgical mask on the face of the patient.
Yeah. I agree. Hey, so Mike, in Portland area and the people that you're talking to, is the fear level going down? Or are people now kind of converting to the sense of let's get things back on the road and get things back opened up because you guys aren't seeing a high prevalence there?
Well, it's mixed. There's a lot of mixed emotions. I mean, I'm on various chat forums across, just across the state of Oregon. Anesthesiologists, they're a bit uncomfortable without, even with, symptom screening and testing proceeding without PPE, without airborne PPE, which doesn't in itself guarantee anything. I think people are looking for zero risk before their kids go to school, before they're comfortable going to some, public facility, and we're not going to be there for some time. So,
I would argue we never hit zero risk, right?
Right. So, I mean, even in a low risk state, I got to say, there's still quite a lot of fear, and and yeah, I can't comment as to whether how appropriate it is, but because I'm pretty healthy. My family's pretty healthy. I'm not that nervous about it, but we have family members that aren't, and I don't want to bring this to my mom or my wife's mother, and they could get quite sick from this. So, I would say, even though we've got very little disease in this state, there's still quite a lot of fear.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking, I don't know if you heard earlier, Dr. Allah was talking about in Israel, people are out at the beaches, they're in the restaurants, they're already out and about. And I remember just a couple of months ago, we were talking about how high the fear level was in Israel. Very, very high fear level. A lot of concern, right?
Yes. Especially some communities for some cities in the country, especially in the Bedouin area and the ultra-Orthodox communities, because there is a lot of density in the cities. The major numbers of positive patients were in this area. So they just close only this area and lock them down. Now restaurants, we don't open it yet.
Oh, you haven't opened restaurants. Okay.
Restaurants, no. Maybe they're talking about the end of this month.
Oh, you said schools. They're starting to open schools.
They're starting already, and next week all the grades. Beaches, I think, on Tuesday. Factories, yes, they already open. They work. Other facilities, yes. Airport, not yet. Still closed.
The whole airport's closed. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just saw an article about an airline flight that they said they were going to socially distance everybody on the
or residents or citizens to come back.
Yeah,
and that's it.
No, I saw this picture of airline flight, and they said everybody was going to be distant, no middle seats, nothing like that. The plane is full of people.
Yeah, no, we still have closed skies.
I mean, I don't know what that means. So.
Next week we have all closed. Only residents or citizens who want to come back, they're allowed to come back.
Have either of you guys seen this pediatric infection that people are starting to talk about? I don't know if you've heard about this, that they're...
I can tell you about a case. It was here in Israel 2 weeks ago. A family, about 9 members, they were all infected.
Wow.
And a child with 11 years old, or 9 years old, 9 years old, she was infected after hours, only hours. She was intubated.
Wow.
Yeah, she was asymptomatic. After few hours, she was intubated. After 3 or 4 days, she was okay. Yeah, we saw some pediatric infections. Yeah.
Well, there's a new series of cases coming out of New York where they're looking at sort of inflammatory vasculitis in young children who are infected with coronavirus. They said it looks more like a Takayasu's arteritis and possibly getting sick in a delayed fashion, like 1 to 2 weeks after being exposed. And then they develop that inflammatory process. I believe I read that there are 3 children that have died in New York State, and there's like 60 that have gotten shown symptoms of this. But this is the first I've heard about that.
That case, she had endocarditis.
She had endocarditis. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get off, but regarding the kids, I would say we'll worry most about our kids, but I mean it's still a disease that infects children much less, and the clinical symptoms are much less, and there's less deaths from it than probably the flu. And in terms of strategies to mitigate risk to children, I don't know that they're all warranted compared to what we've done for the flu or other diseases in children. Yeah. That said, we don't want them to spread to our vulnerable populations, and that's who I worry about most.
Yeah, them becoming vectors, right? Mike, thank you so much for joining. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah,
I
keep
hope-
doing this. I'll hop on when I can, and
Yeah, I appreciate it.
it's always good to see your face and hear you in person next time.
Yeah, at some point in the future.
Eventually. Yeah,
Good to talk to you.
Nice
Bye.
to meet you.
Good evening.
Yeah, so I mean, I worry about that when we talk about opening schools up. Is one, at first I didn't worry about the kids getting too sick because I felt like the data was pretty good on that. I was worried about them becoming vectors for infection to other people, but the risk of them getting infected really complicates opening schools up in a different way, and maybe it's a small prevalence. The other weird thing is that there's apparently different strains of the virus, and so maybe there's different strains that are causing different symptoms in different populations. So Ricky asked me the question, what's the link between 5G towers and these illnesses? I think that's a myth. I think that's a myth that's being passed around the internet. I saw a publication that showed that that there's an overlap in the location of 5G towers and the prevalence of illness, so that there's higher incidence of illness in places with high prevalence of 5G towers. The problem is that's also the same as population density. So the 5G towers are in population dense areas and the illnesses in population dense areas. I think that's a internet myth that's being passed around, sort of a conspiracy theory that's being passed around, and overall has been debunked at this time. I don't think there's any connection to that. 5G is actually pretty low energy compared to a lot of the other exposure that we have in everybody's life. But nobody can go to work, but 5G towers are popping up everywhere. Well, that's a different question. That may be more of an economic question than a medical question. That I don't know the answer to, but I don't think it's explains the cause of the disease. So if anybody has any more legitimate information than that, I'd love to look at it. But as far as I can tell, nothing strong. So any other thoughts, Ala, before we sign off here?
About the schools, I think it's also the problem is economical problem than more than health problem. I think they want to open the schools to permit the parents to go to work.
Oh no, I agree.
Open the markets and opening the
Well, that and parents are terrible teachers. We're not very good at it.
yeah.
And our kids,
Because in Japan they open the schools and they just shut them down and shut them off again after 2-3 weeks.
oh, they did. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
So the schools are closed again in Japan.
Close, yeah, because they said that a lot of rise again in the positive
Really?
patient.
I think there's a lot of intersection between hope and reality, that a lot of people think that they're hoping that things are better, so they start doing things, and then the reality comes back and shows them that maybe it's not the right time. And, you know, we have to remember in all of this, the virus doesn't care what our opinion is. You know, it doesn't care about our expert opinion. It doesn't care about our public opinion. It doesn't care about our political opinion, economic opinion. It doesn't care about any of those opinions whatsoever. It's going to do what it's going to do. And we're just trying to understand it and get ahead of it as much as possible, but it could care less what we think. And so at some point we're just reacting. And so we can try.
A way to survive with the virus. That's the only thing we can do.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to get to a place where we just learn to live with it. And that's going to mean that a certain amount of people are going to get sick. A certain amount of people are going to get really sick. A certain amount of people are going to die until we can find treatments, until we can find management strategies, until we can find vaccines. It's going to be ugly for a while.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's very good to talk to you. I hope you are
Thank you
keeping
very much.
well. I'm glad that things are getting better there in Israel. I hope they stay that way.
I'll keep you update with if we had some new things.
Yeah. And I'm sorry you have to work more. But it's a good thing.
Yeah, I just woke up 4 hours ago. That's
Oh.
Yeah.
So one last question. So when will the vaccine be ready? Do you know any information on a vaccine? I've heard a lot of different things. There's a vaccine out of Oxford that
I read in somewhere they start working with other companies from the United States and from England.
Yeah.
We have a laboratory close to Jerusalem. They start to work on the vaccine. I don't know at which level, at which step we are in the process, but they said that maybe on November, maybe they will have something.
So my understanding is that there were some vaccines that were being worked on for the original SARS and for MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome virus. And so those vaccines had already gone through safety trials and stability trials, some of the early phase work that vaccines require before they can get to human trials, and including animal studies. And so they were able to modify that work for the new SARS-CoV-2 virus, and they moved quickly to human trials. I know that at least in the United States, they've already started doing some preliminary human testing on vaccines.
No,
and so they have.
We didn't arrive to the human.
Yeah, so I know in the U.S. they have already. I think our institution is going to be enrolling patients. And I think in the UK they've started enrolling. I don't know about other places, but so at least they're moving through the phases faster than originally expected. And so let's see, somebody says, Tony Short says, Oxford team says 80% chance by September or October, fingers crossed, no guarantees. So that's, I think the first team I heard about was the team in Oxford, that they were moving faster than everybody else because they were already by chance having already worked on coronavirus vaccines in the past. They were ahead in the process. And I also know that the Bill Gates Foundation has been investing in, they're sort of pre-investing in a lot of factories, because the other part of it is once you discover the virus, the vaccine, you have to produce it at scale and get it distributed all over the world because everybody wants the vaccine if it works. And so he's been investing in factories all over the world for different types of vaccines, knowing that 90% of those may fail and never be used. But then that 10% that is ready, they'll be able to produce vaccine earlier, faster, and at scale faster than if they had waited until the vaccine is confirmed to start the factory process. So I know the Gates Foundation has been investing in that, sort of anticipating a vaccine.
Yeah, we hope so.
So Mornay says one last thing. He said Ezra in Greece is canceled in September. Yeah, I think Ezra is discussing the fall meeting in November being canceled still. And then the question is, when will delegates be willing to travel to meetings? Who knows? Who knows, right? I wish all of us, I'm hopeful that our spring meetings next year will be able to travel to them. That's where I'm aiming. But, personally.
Meetings this year.
What's that?
I was registered for 3 meetings this year.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All canceled. We had a big
regional anesthesia and they just canceled everything.
Yeah, and I had we already had a 2-week vacation planned for Europe, and we're slowly canceling pieces of that, trying to get some of our money back for this summer because and we've been planning this trip for 2 years, and the whole trip got canceled. So
my money for the meeting in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. So Mornay, I hope that we can have meetings again by next spring. That's my hope. But personally, as a family, we're not planning or scheduling any out of country vacations for another year. And we're still debating about road trips in the United States. We're sort of timid about even taking a road trip right now. So I don't know when people will be willing to travel. It's one of the reasons I'm trying to investigate this virtual meeting kind of solution. So that's hopefully a component of still learning from each other, having some amount of face-to-face interaction, and not just typing on Twitter or on emails and stuff. So we'll see. We have to be creative and innovative for a little while at least. Bill Gates Foundation have been studying vaccine for years in Africa, causing side effects. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't have more information about that. Monkeys given Oxford vaccine could not be reinfected, so that's positive too. So Tony Short said that they've been giving the vaccine to monkeys in Oxford, and they were exposing them, I think, to pretty high concentrations of vaccine, and they did not get reinfected. The other thing that was interesting I saw was a study out of South Korea where they initially saw patients who had been infected in the past, had tested positive for antibodies, and then tested positive for virus again afterwards. And so they thought they became reinfected, but turns out that that was dead virus in their system that was still triggering a positive test, but they weren't actually reinfected. So that's reassuring that maybe there is some amount of self-vaccination after exposure, self-immunity after exposure, but that's still a big question mark too. So anyway,
from recovered patients, it's also
the plasma from recovered patients. Yeah, so our friend Steve Haskins had a really bad case of coronavirus in New York City, and he recovered from that. It took him a while, but he recovered from it, and now he's donating his plasma. Yeah, he's donating his plasma for donation. So that's been, at least the stuff I've seen, has been at least preliminarily effective in reducing the intensity of disease for the really sick patients. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you again. I'll talk to you again soon. I'll try to do this a little bit more often. I had to take a break. I did too fast in a row. I got burned out. So I took a little break, and I'll try to get back on more often.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you.
So one more time, just before I wrap up, I am trying to build this website up with different kinds of information. RajGuptaMD.com. Go visit it. I'd love to see your opinions about it. I'm still working on the design and layout and the content, but I'd love for people's opinions. I'll be putting blog posts, sometimes my opinions, sometimes just sharing stuff that I've accomplished or done. I'm also a photographer, for those of you who don't know, and so periodically I'm thinking about doing some posts on photography that I've done, reminisce a little bit about trips in the past, but also talk about how I took the picture, why I took the picture, how I edited the picture, things like that. I think that would be fun to post on there. Lectures, any lectures that I have that I can share online, I use SlideShare, so I'll put them up there, and then the lectures can actually live on this website. And if you click at the website itself, then the lecture, you can advance and watch it embedded on the website and actually go through those talks. Other things, let's see, down here I have lectures, and then any saved live streams, previous live streams. So right now I'm trying to get all the poster sessions from the ASRA meetings posted on here. You can see all them if you go to more live streams. I've got 3 of them up here right now. I'm going to try to get a bunch of them that we've recorded and put on YouTube. I'll try to post them, embed them on here as well, so you can watch them there. And then I've got my Instagram feed, pictures that I post on Instagram coming through here. Some of the stuff on Twitter comes up there, and you can always send me questions or comments direct to the website as well. But anyway, I'm still working on enhancing this. You can contact me through this website. I've also put a page on here, which I'd love for you guys to visit. If you go under more about me, there's friends, and I'm trying to other people who have web pages that they've built. I'm trying to put their links to their web pages here, so you guys have a good way to build our community of content, so we can share that with each other. So, all right. Ricky, I don't have an answer to your question about the immune system naturally. That's a dangerous game, I think, right now, because we don't know how sick some people will get. There are people who try to purposely expose themselves to the virus and then build a immune response to that and hopefully stay safe from it. We don't know how long that natural immunity lasts. We don't know how sick the person will get on the front end. There's a lot of things we don't know, and so that's I don't know if I can recommend that to people or not. Let me put the So Dr. Allah asked me to put the website link here. So I will add that on here. So that's just the website, rajguptamd.com. That's my new website. So it should be pretty easy to find, just my name and then MD and .com, and you can find it there. And there's links to my photography website from there. There's links to my Twitter feed from there. There's links to my blog posts and other things. And like I said, I'm building that up a little bit more so that it's more robust. What's the difference in the vaccine? Again, good question. I think those are all question marks that are being assessed and tested right now. Again, hope and reality are going to intersect somewhere. So the hope is that either if you're exposed yourself and have a mild illness, you develop an immunity, or if you get a bad illness and recover, you develop a good immunity, or if you can get the vaccine, and the vaccine is presumably a deactivated virus, so you don't get the full illness, but still develop the immunity like other vaccines do. So if one way or another you can develop immunity, then you're less likely to get infected. And ultimately, the concept of herd immunity is that a certain percentage of the population, I think it has to be 60, 70, 80% of the population, has a retained immunity, or what they call neutralizing antibodies, the antibodies that can fight off the virus if it's exposed to it again. If that percentage of the population has that immunity, then the virus can't spread through the population. So some people might get sick, but then it doesn't spread to the next people. And hopefully you can protect the most vulnerable that way. And then the general population doesn't become vectors for the virus to spread further. So 80% is the number I've seen. Some people have quoted a smaller number depending on what other measures are being taken. But the question marks in all of that is, one, we have to develop a vaccine. Two, we don't know what level of infection from natural infection develops what level of immunity. How long does it last in your system? Is it a temporary immunity or is it a permanent one? For example, flu vaccine, you have to get a vaccine every year because it's not a lasting immunity and the virus mutates. And so you have to get re-vaccinated every year. So we don't know those components. And then honestly, we don't even know if the antibodies are effective against the repeat infection yet, because we just don't have enough data. And unfortunately, all of those things take time. They take testing, and lots of people are working on them, but that information is still trickling out. But it will come. We'll see in the next couple of months. We'll have a lot of information about the impact of antibodies, the efficacy of immunity from infection, natural immunity that develops from infection. How efficacious is it? How do we know it's efficacious? We'll have information on early trials on vaccines. So lots of information will come. It's just how patient can we be and what happens in the interim? That's the real question. And staying in your house, does it lower your immune system? I think staying healthy protects your immune system. Staying in your house by itself, I don't know if it increases or lowers your immune system. It's just staying in your house is reducing exposure so we don't spike the system with too many people sick at the same time. Ultimately, we are going to have to go out into community. Ultimately, we are going to be exposed. And ultimately, some people are going to get sick. The question is, how fast do they get sick? Can the hospital systems handle those people? And do we have better strategies for handling the sick people so they don't get overly sick? So thanks for the very good questions and the conversation. I will try to get back on here in the near future. I appreciate all of you guys. And keep in touch with me on my Twitter page at Dr.Raj Gupta on Twitter. I'll put that up there real quick as well. I presume you probably know where I am because that's where you started from. So thank you, everybody, and I'll talk to you again soon.